Now, Dr. Salerno, you were talking about the shame, right? And this is something that I hear so often, and I mean, might be the most prevalent, in fact. It's a shame-based disorder. I've heard very big people talking about it being a shame-based disorder, and they feel such shame. Again, I never saw that. And they're all different. I say this sometimes, narcissists are still human beings. And I know that they can present a bit differently, but what does the research show on whether or not they experience what we see as shame?
I'm going to have to play both sides here because there is a lot of research, anecdotal data, case studies based on subjective personal interpretation of clinicians that spans decades that insist, going back to Dr. Simon's, this overgeneralized theory, we found it, we got it. Now let's apply it to everybody that comes into our office. There's decades and countless peer-reviewed research stating narcissism is shame-based. I mean, it's out there. So I'm not going to deny that the literature is not out there. There's clinical literature, it's peer-reviewed, it's published. Peer-reviewed doesn't mean valid research or verification of the research, by the way. It just means they're operating within the standards of that theory. So I think a lot of people don't know that. But there's this idea that the shame in narcissists is unconscious. Well, so here's where we run into this problem, because narcissists can't tell you if they feel shame because it's unconscious. Even if they deny that they are ashamed, they're in denial. Well, what a terrific theory that is, because it's untestable and you can't disprove it. And that's the problem with this theory.
Yeah.
So theories have to remain testable. So when we hear people say this is a shame-based disorder, and even if the narcissist claims they're not ashamed, they still really are because we know better than them. That's been going on in clinical practice forever, and that's a problem. That's not science. That's people doing magic, as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
What we know now about narcissism is, whether we're talking about trait narcissism or NPD, we're talking about research that shows that there is a heritable component to the traits that we consider the problematic traits related to narcissism. So grandiosity, lack of empathy, excessive attention seeking, a need for admiration, not necessarily feeling much guilt or remorse after harming other people. And so all psychological traits have a heritable component to them. That doesn't mean that it's genetically determined, so I want to clarify that. But when we're talking about shame, shame is not equivalent to the pathology that we call narcissism. And I'll just say, we have many different clinical presentations when it comes to this. To say that narcissism objectively or universally is rooted in shame, it doesn't hold up under evidence.
That's pretty simple. Now, Dr. Simon, you were laughing at certain parts. Tell me what was happening for you.
Well, let me preface it this way. It's a shame what's happened to the concept of shame. It's a crying shame.
Love it.
Are there levels of shame that are toxic and detrimental to a person's development? Absolutely. Is shame an inherently bad thing? I hear, Dr. Salerno was mentioning the volume of literature out there. Much of it insisted that guilt, feeling badly about what you did, is okay. But shame, feeling badly about who you are as a person, is never okay. That is just plain bunk, because the worst narcissists, the most pathological of narcissists, can be defined pretty much as shameless. Things that would cause any other relatively well-adjusted person to say, oh my goodness, what kind of person am I to have said or have done this to another human being? That doesn't exist for some narcissists. And I can tell you with certainty, because I've worked with the most pathological, character-wise populations that you can work with. And when I was doing work with prisons, setting up programs, and working with people, you come across those people who manage somehow, despite the worst circumstances of their upbringing, despite a lifetime of bad associations and bad choices, manage to turn things around. And I can tell you that without exception, every single person that managed to turn around their lives, their attitudes, their way of being, did so not out of a sense of guilt. It was when they took that look in the mirror and decided they know longer wanted to be the kind of person that they had been, that things started to change. They were saved by shame, not by guilt. Sometimes they felt guilty every time they did the unthinkable, and guess what? They still did it again.
Still did it. Guilt
Yep.
doesn't stop them. That's very true. I have
Exactly.
to say, in my experience, I have experienced narcissistic abuse as shameless. I
Yep.
did not personally see any shame, but more specifically, even through working with so many clients, when you hear these
Right.
stories and this just like relentless abuse, where's the shame?
Exactly.
Shame often makes you, it shakes you to your
Mhm.
core, and you feel so
Exactly.
awful about it that it changes the behavior.
And
That's
by the
probably
way,
an oversimplification, but
being embarrassed at being uncovered or being shown to be the fool is not shame.
that is important to note, I think,
Yeah.
because they do care so much about what people think, or at least many,
Exactly.
they care so
being
much about what people think,
uncovered,
but
yes,
Yeah.
that's not shame.
that's exactly right. Being uncovered, the jig is up. Now I look like a fool. That is not
Right.
shame. That's embarrassment, and it's something intolerable to narcissists. And that's what gives folks who are one other soapbox. Give me just a second with this.
Do it.
By and large, mental health professionals of all stripes are the most egregious misusers of scientific terms. Top of the list, and then I'll stop. Top of the list, codependency.
I have
Another
a
brand.
visceral reaction at that. Yes.
Another program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, right? Part 2 coming up.
Yeah.
I agree so much. There's actually, that's a whole, trust me, I agree with you. That's a whole episode on its own.